Hey out there in podcast land. Thank you for being here. This is our very first episode, our inaugural episode. Thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we're talking about coaches' redemptions, misunderstandings, fish out of waters. No, we're not talking about Mighty Ducks. We're talking about the movie Champions. It's got Ernie Hudson, Woody Harrelson, Kaitlin Olson, and a whole cast of others. Let's get into it. It's Acting Up with AJ and crew.
These guys are capable of a lot more than you think. You'd be surprised.
Don't make me say it. Make you say what?
If you're gonna say it.
That's a boo-boo word.
Yeah, do us the big balls dance, baby.
So dance on big balls.
I have Down syndrome. I'm not deaf. Got it, Slick?
These little nuances that just are annoying to people with disabilities.
What do I call them?
May I suggest you call them by their names?
Yeah, so on this episode, we want to talk about, what we're really going to be talking about is the public's interaction and kind of education of dealing with disability, with workplace abuse going on, public situations that were handled kind of poorly but brought up really, really good points, as well as personal interactions. And what I thought this movie did really well was they brought up those issues but never lingered on them. They cut them off at the head immediately, said that was the wrong thing, and then moved on. And it was like, yep, that's how it should be. This is how it's going to be.
Yeah, and it was, to me, it was done in the way that they're supposed to be done. Like, done in, very, subtle ways that really fit into the story well. Because in some of these scenarios, I've seen other scenarios where it's really obvious that they're making a point. And I really like this because they, in my mind, they highlighted these issues, but it wasn't like a big red sign like this is the point they were making. They didn't beat anybody over the head with it.
Yeah, they really treated it like adults. They weren't complaining about, oh, he said this, they said that. No, they were just saying, I would like to be treated as an adult, and this is how I run things. Deal with it.
Yeah, and they were dealing with very adult issues. Like all of them had a job, and they had families and responsibilities, and girlfriends and boyfriends, and just very real normalized.
Yeah, let's dig into that. There was a montage in the movie where Cheech Marin's character was explaining to Woody about how they live outside of this Special Olympics basketball team. They don't just do Special Olympics basketball. One was working as a veterinarian at an animal shelter. Another one was working in a restaurant as just washing dishes, but still a 9 to 5 job, or even a 10 to 12 hour job.
Yeah.
Like Benny, for instance, he lives on his own. He wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning and works in a restaurant in the kitchen. Now, Blair is not as self-sufficient. He lives in a supervised group home with some of the other guys, and every morning he goes to a gardening workshop. They all live pretty full lives.
A job can be anything, and they were just bringing up the point of a fulfilling life, that you feel accomplished doing something. And most of these people were happy in those jobs that they had found.
Yeah. Now, for some people, I'm not saying that this is bad, but for some people that don't like exposition, and this part of the story, there was clear exposition. This is what it was. But I thought, some of you might not agree out there, but I thought this was done very well. I liked how it was I like how it was done.
Right. It was almost told to the audience to not just to declare and give these characters backstory, but to tell an audience that thinks that people with disabilities don't work, don't contribute. Is saying that no, they do a lot of things. They do a lot of fulfilling stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I really appreciated, like, right away. It's like, no, these aren't, because a lot of times people with disabilities are portrayed as like, so, and we do need help, but just like a group of people that need help, that, that rely on a lot of people, take a lot of resources. But that scene showed that they contribute to society and they work like me or you or Sean or anybody. People with disabilities, pay bills, they pay taxes. Well, surprise, surprise. But if you're working, you're paying.
Yeah, rent's not free.
Taxes, yeah. Yeah,
No government handouts. Well, that sort of leads into as well on the fact of workplace abuse. In the discussion of Benny's character, the dishwasher at the restaurant, that he was clearly being abused by this restaurant and treated like a lesser human.
What are you doing out here? You're supposed to stay in the kitchen. People might see you. What's wrong with you?
But my team won.
Oh, really? They did? I don't give a damn. Stop busting my balls with this basketball nonsense, all right? I pay to work, not run around little shorts. Go. Get to work. Dribble the dishes. Try that.
Yeah, like the boss was just, very, and it wasn't just like you have to be here and like, you have to be here and, I need you here and this is for this. But he was very, like you said, abusive, and he was very, disregarded towards the character. And it was almost like, it was almost like he had the stance of like, he was probably mean and abusive because he probably had the mindset of like, I hired you, I'm giving you this job, so you should be grateful. That's how some people might feel,
Yeah, not only that, like when they came in and busted his ass and played that whole prank to get him to pay for those plane tickets, like they clearly stepped on some sore notes. Like he was clearly getting government handouts and probably getting tax write-offs and other economic values for having a disabled person in his workforce. Like he was keeping his abuse on the download, but was definitely benefiting from having Benny there.
I loved how Benny was able to, and I guess we should say like some of this will be spoilery, I guess, if you didn't see the film. But my favorite part as it relates to Benny's story is like how he was able to, he was able to get the courage to stand up to his boss. He lost his job, but he was able to stand up and say, like, I'm not gonna take this. I don't have to take this. My life is more than working for you. Yes, I need a job, but I also I love what I do, and I love this game, and I want to celebrate and be with my friends and team.
Yeah, that was kind of hard, like when you're like standing, you really are rooting for Benny in this movie, and then to just know it's like, oh yeah, it was fine. I got fired. And like he writes it off, like not thinking about it, but like, yeah, that's definitely discrimination of just being like, you're not going to work at all. And maybe that's for all waiters and waitresses. Other points that were kind of talked upon was certainly the bus situation when they're riding on the way in, people not knowing how to kind of cohabitate the same space as a person with a disability, or not recognizing when somebody is doing something.
Yeah, and I have noticed, because I have been in groups where it's like more than one person with a disability, and people kind of look like, whoa, what's going on? Or there may be a sense of uncomfortability, like people are just uncomfortable with disability, or not knowing how to, like, how they feel about people with disabilities.
Yeah, and the way how they immediately turn to look for somebody that is the parent, like quote unquote parent of the group. Are you responsible for these children? And again, treating them not like the adults that they are.
Yeah, and again, because I just want to emphasize, this movie was about adults with disabilities. They might have been like in their some of them might have been in their late teens, but would you say most of them were probably in their 20s or 30s?
Yeah, and I would say late 20s would be the youngest. Yeah, and Cosentino, being such a strong female character, also was great to be the one to deliver that message when Sonny, the assistant coach, is walking up to her and just babying her for just doing a basketball maneuver of just moving your feet shuffling side to side.
Like, he was and I know he meant well, but it was like good job, and over like emphasizing, and she was like, I have Down syndrome, I'm not a child. Or
yeah, that was like that. What I think this movie did the best was the fact that it was just bringing up these little nuances that just are annoying to people with disabilities. They don't want to be treated like that, and like these little moments didn't have to be lingered on. They were just brought up, they were corrected, and it was like, great, move on. Now we can continue with our happy lives again.
Move those feet. That's what we're going to work on today. Good job. Good job.
I have Down syndrome. I'm not deaf. Got it, Slick?
Got it. Cool, yeah. I'm going to be with the rest of the guys.
Yeah, there was, which I thought was funny, but then, so I'm not necessarily placing the blame of the feet of this movie, but oftentimes in movies that feature characters with intellectual disabilities, the R word comes up, or is used, and a lot of times with people with intellectual disabilities in movies, I've never seen it not come up. And so, and full disclosure, like, I was abused with that said word, so maybe I have sensitivities to that word, but it often bothers me that anytime there's a context of somebody with a mental disability, especially, that word comes up. With that said, though, I thought that there was a funny part in the movie. They're on
The basketball court.
Yeah, they can't use their regular facility to practice. There's something going on, so their coach, played by Woody Harrelson, takes them on a local court. And somebody's people are using the court. But what does he say? He says, got next, or
We got next.
Yeah, but I'm bringing it round.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, no, but come on.
Come on, man.
Like, you're going to bring these people onto the courts? And like, no, we're not going to have them play. Like, come on, be real. And the movie did a really great job of bouncing around it, but doing on that point of, even though that guy did not say it,
You know.
he was
No, I
hinting
don't know.
at it
Don't make me say
again and again and
Make me
again.
say what?
Yeah, and Woody Harrelson made him say it.
That's a boo-boo word.
Because like, if you're gonna say it, say it. And so the guy said it, and he reaped what he sowed. Because and Woody Harrelson said that was a boo-boo word in the scene early in the beginning of the movie. Like, Woody is like charged with drunk driving, and I think so. He goes to court. This is why he's in this scenario in the first place, is because the judge gave him community service to coach this team of Special Olympic athletes. And I think, was it his lawyer or something that said, because he was caught off guard, and he was about to say, are they, he was going to use the word. And I think his lawyer said, that's a boo-boo word, So, and that was kind of done in everything was kind of done in a comedic way, which I kind of, I appreciate, because like I said, I've seen other, now with that said, I'm not criticizing this movie in terms of that, but I would like to, in the movies in the future, I would like to see that every time there's somebody with a disability or intellectual disability, that we don't have to use that word. In my opinion, and it might just be my opinion, because again, I know I have sensitivities to the word, but I don't think we need to continue to bring that point of like, this is a bad word. I think in my opinion, we're over that. So
Cheech Marin said it really well when Woody was, well, what do I call him? And he goes to him, he's like, you call them by their name. Yeah. Like there's no other way around it. Like, that's as easy as it gets. And the movie also did really well with like kind of showing the characteristics of each of these disabilities on like how people with Down syndrome operate, and how they feel happy, how other brain traumas, how that might change somebody's body, and accepting them for who they are. And all the quirks included, because every human being has quirks, and we should be accepting of those quirks. Like, that's what makes your personality who you are.
Here's Cheryl Green with Newsfeed. Cheryl, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around exactly what's going on with the census.
Okay, here's one from early December 2023, and I think this one's really interesting. You can find it on the AP News website, and the title is "The Census Bureau Wants to Change How It Asks About Disabilities. Some Advocates Don't Like It." This is by Mike Schneider. Here's the story. The U.S. Census Bureau wants to change how it asks people about disabilities, and some advocates are complaining that they were not consulted enough on what amounts to a major overhaul in how disabilities would be defined by the federal government. Disability advocates say the change would artificially reduce their numbers by almost half. At stake are not only whether people with disabilities get vital resources for housing, schools, or program benefits, but whether people with disabilities are counted accurately in the first place, experts said. Some also question the timing of the change, which comes just as more people are living with new, long-term conditions from the COVID-19 pandemic. Census Bureau officials say the proposed change on its most comprehensive survey of American life will align the U.S. with international standards, allowing comparisons among countries. They also say it will better capture how disabilities occur in the real world, since they rarely fit neatly into stark yes or no boxes that account for variations or nuance. The Bureau has spent time, money, and energy trying to improve counts of racial and ethnic minorities who have been historically undercounted, but the statistical agency seems willing to adapt questions that will shortchange the number of people with disabilities, said Scott Landis, an associate professor of sociology at Syracuse University. Quote, "This, in my mind, is illogical," unquote. Landis, who is visually impaired, said in an interview, quote, "There is a piece of me that thinks, how dare you, to think that we don't count? I get offended," end quote. If given final approval, the changes to the American Community Survey questions would be implemented in 2025. The ACS is the most comprehensive survey of American life, covering commuting times, internet access, family life, income, education levels, disabilities, and military service, among other topics. The statistical agency was asked to make the change by the National Center for Health Statistics and is accepting public comment on the proposal through December 19th. The existing questions ask respondents to answer yes or no if they have difficulty or, quote, serious difficulty, seeing, even with glasses, or are blind, hearing or are deaf, concentrating, remembering or making decisions because of a physical, mental, or emotional condition, walking or climbing stairs, dressing or bathing, or performing everyday tasks because of a physical, mental, or emotional condition. If the answer is yes, they are counted as having a disability. Under the proposed change, respondents would be allowed to answer most of the same questions with 4 choices: no difficulty, some difficulty, a lot of difficulty, and cannot do at all. There are tweaks to the language of the questions, and the proposal adds a query on whether respondents have trouble communicating. But the most significant change involves the threshold beyond which people are determined to have a disability. The international standards being considered by the Census Bureau typically define a person as having a disability if they answer, quote, cannot do it all, or, quote, a lot of difficulty for any task or function. During testing last year by the Census Bureau, the percentage of respondents who were defined as having a disability went from 13.9% using the current questions to 8.1% under the international standards. When the definition was expanded to also include some difficulty, it grew to 31.7%. Marlene Salo said her degenerative spine condition presents difficulties on some days, but overall she is able to function on a daily basis, so she worries that she might not be considered as having a disability with the revised questions. Quote, right now it's not inclusive and it will miss many individuals within my community, unquote. Salo, executive director of the National Disability Rights Network, said last month at a meeting of a Census Bureau advisory committee of which she is a member. Officials at the Census Bureau and the Health Statistics Agency argue that the change will give officials better information and details about disabilities that can inform how services or resources are provided. Census Bureau officials had 2 conference calls with disability advocates on the subject this week. Quote, forcing a dichotomy masks nuance, end quote, Julie Weeks, an official at the National Center for Health Statistics, said during a presentation last month. The terminology surrounding disabilities has evolved in recent years, moving away from labels that imply inferiority and toward more sensitive language that outlines the specific conditions or circumstances in which individuals or groups live. The Associated Press defers whenever possible to the wishes of people or groups in how they choose to be described, but uses neutral language that withholds judgment about a person's condition. Disability advocates said the international standards were formulated without their input. Last month, the Census Bureau's National Advisory Committee recommended that the statistical agency not adopt the change until it meets further with disability advocates and researchers. While the proposal may be better for scientific research, the questions, if approved, will be adapted to the needs of agencies and not people with disabilities in mind, Andrew Houghtonville, research director at the Institute on Disability at the University of New Hampshire, told members of the National Advisory Committee at last month's meeting. Quote, this has taken a lot of people by surprise, unquote, Houghtonville said. Some experts believe the current questions don't adequately account for people with mental health problems, developmental disabilities, or chronic health conditions like those faced by many people living with long COVID. But they say the proposed change isn't the answer. Quote, disability is an evolving concept, and there is a new kind of disability we didn't have 5 years ago, long COVID, and we need to be able to account for that and other changes, unquote, said Susan Popkin, co-director of the Disability Equity Policy Initiative at the Urban Institute, who has a chronic autoimmune condition. The proposed change is grating to some advocates since it is occurring at a time when disability has grown to be an identity and a social movement rather than just a function-based definition of someone's limitations. For instance, a person with limited hearing may be able to function fully with the help of hearing aids, but can still identify as having a disability. Quote, "You can be proud of your disability and still not want the pain and symptoms of the condition that led to that disability. That is part of a shift in disability as a demographic group," end quote, said Bonnie Lynn Swenner, director of the Johns Hopkins Disability Health Research Center, who has low vision. Quote, "There is a shift of view in disability pride and claiming disability identity as part of who we are, not as a deficit," end quote, Swenner said. "I know as news wizard I'm just supposed to read the stories, but I will say, as voice of reason, that I appreciate the way this journalist spoke to people with disabilities and identified their relationship to their disabilities, given that the point of this story was to say that the Census Bureau is changing these questions without having talked to the people who it's going to affect the most. Here's hoping that they put this one on ice for a minute and have some more dialogue with the community."
You're listening to Acting Up with the AJ and Crew. Thank you so much for being a part of the crew. You can follow us on all social media platforms, and you can like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to the show. Yeah, and so we were just kind of talking about, as we were watching the film, how authentic it was to a lot of, and it brought a lot of aspects to that we deal with in the disability community, from, like we said, from employment to caretaking to family dynamics, to which leads us to there was another character in the movie who played a sister to, was it Johnny's kid? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it, and we were just kind of saying how, like, it, you know, because there's a scene in the movie where I think, you know, Woody Harrelson wants her to be involved on some Saturdays.
Wants her to drive the bus. Wants her to drive the team halfway across the state to go to these games.
You strike me as someone whose weekends are free.
Good one.
Alex doesn't work on Saturdays.
Doesn't work on Saturdays. Well, and you have this tremendous chariot at your disposal.
And she brings up the point of, you know, she just brings up the point of saying how packed her schedule is, and you just can't, you just don't realize, you know, everything that I have to do. And
Let me break this down for you, Coach. I'm a woman in my 40s. I don't have time for bullshit, all right? Do you know what I do during the weekday?
No.
I perform Shakespeare for middle school kids right after lunch. Do you know what middle school kids want to be doing right after lunch?
Huh?
It ain't Shakespeare. It's exhausting, but it's acting, and I love acting. So after that, I go home and I do a lot of freelance bookkeeping, because Shakespeare, and brace yourself here, this might blow your mind, doesn't pay so much. And then I go pick up Johnny from work, and we spend the whole afternoon together, and I love him very much, but it's exhausting. And then I make dinner with my mom, and then I watch Doctor Who with Johnny, and if I have any energy left at the end of the night, sometimes I hop on Tinder.
Yeah, she brought it very succinctly to him on the fact that somebody out there trying to solve a problem can easily go to, oh, why don't you just ask your sister to do it for you? Or why don't you go ask your mother that does it for you all the time? And not realizing the amount of time that it takes, or the amount of time that has already been spent with your disabled relative, and that sometimes you need to have breaks. And these Saturdays, she brought it up very succinctly, like those free times are the times that she cherishes very dearly. and that it's not a small order to just be like, oh yeah, willy-nilly, I'm going to just fill my time up with this. It's something that is very much, she's devoting her life to her brother.
And she loves her brother. It's not about not loving your brother. Right. And I brought up to you that this is something that happens to me a lot. Like, you know, and people, friends and associates that are well-meaning, they mean well, but oftentimes they're like, they bring up things that I can be a part of or do, or that I should do and look into, and they're like, well, ask your mom. And I'm like, well, you know, I know you might be busy, but can you help me? Because my mom, you know, my mom is my main caretaker. She is my PCA, what some of you may know. Like, my mom is my personal care assistant and a mom. So she works a lot with me. And so I think people are, you know, well-meaning. They don't mean to not realize. 'Cause I think people are just used to, like, they see that my mom does a lot of different things for me, but they don't take into account how much that is, though, you know. And so it's very frustrating for me and my mom. My mom, she is my main caretaker. I don't really have any other caretakers, and you know, so a lot of times things that I'm gonna do does fall on her. So, you know, and that happens to a lot of caretakers.
Mm-hmm. That's why it was also really great that the movie highlighted on the idea, the group home for those kids, where a lot of people with disability go and they're hanging out and they live full time with their friends. They go off to work, they come back home, and there are caretakers that are there in those group homes. It wasn't brought up, but it is like just shedding a light that there is a way for people with disability, cognitive or otherwise, to live full lives and be separated from their families, be able to be away, have a parent, be able to get some breaks here and there. Like, these are options, they exist.
And there was a point in the movie where the sister was, I want to remember, I can't remember her character name. Do you?
Kaitlin Olson's character of Alex.
Okay, so the character of Alex was, okay, so the character of Benny really, you know,
of Johnny,
excuse me, Johnny really was excited about this prospect of moving in with his buddies, having his own place, and being roommates with his friends. And they, like, he was excited. He was like, we're gonna be the three amigos. And he was excited about the prospect, but he knew that his sister was very hesitant about she didn't want him to be in that be in a group home at all, because she was like, you know, he has care here. And I thought to myself, those things come up because she was probably very concerned about his level of care. And also, I just thought about this, maybe to her, maybe in a way, in her mind, a group home may mean that, which is not true at all, but to her it may mean that, like, you know, like, I don't love my brother, or he's not going to get the right type of care that he needs, or we're giving up on him, or, you know, might be concerned about his safety, which, you know, those things are real. You know, I don't want to trivialize those fears and concerns, because I I've been in some scenarios where I stayed in some group homes, and those weren't the right scenarios for me, and I was in a bad way, and I had to be taken out of those situations. So that can happen, but in this case, I think it was more fearful, and I think it's also about growth. If you're used to doing so many things, if you're used to doing a thing for so many years, where you're completely dedicated, mind, body, and soul, to caring for a loved one, and then to all of a sudden for that not to be the case, even though it's a good thing because it shows growth and being an adult and can be in his own way, that can be jarring. It's not going to be easy. And also it showed that just because a person from Johnny's perspective, he was very aware that of the dynamics of his mom and sister. Like, he knew that, like, there wasn't a father in the home, and he knew that the father left because of him. He also knew that his sister loved him very much, and because his father walked out on them I feel like as a brother and as a man, even though he's disabled, he felt like he didn't want to do that to his mom and sister. So he had the awareness of knowing about this pain, and he didn't want to do the same pain, So I like that too, because that showed you may have a disability. That does not mean that you're not aware, and that you don't care for others, whether it's the right way or the wrong way of looking at things. Like, we all care for each other, and I like that in a way because it showed that whether it was unhealthy or not, his sister cared for him, and he cared for his sister and his mom. This is Content Roundup. This is the segment where we're going to talk about movie streaming and television. And we're also going to maybe talk about some books every now and again. And some gaming as well. And a whole lot more. Here we go with our very first Content Roundup. Okay, guys, we're going to start off with the spin-off of Hawkeye, the long-awaited series of Echo. Now, Echo is going to take place right after the events of Hawkeye. The character of Maya Lopez is being pursued by the Wilson Fisk organization. She has to move back home to Oklahoma and reconnect with her Native American roots. Not only is the character of Maya Lopez Native American, she's also deaf and an amputee. You can catch all 5 episodes streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu starting January 10th. Closed captioning and audio description are available. Now, I say that with a caveat because we know for sure that both closed captioning and audio description will be available on the Disney Plus platform. I can't say for sure on Hulu because when it comes to audio description, it can be a little bit iffy and spotty on Hulu. However, Disney did just purchase Hulu in full, so audio description may be available. Now, this next one may be filed under the label of very obvious, but did you know on Netflix, if you type in disability on your search, a whole library of disability content, films, and specials will come up. Just type in the word disability on your Netflix streaming platform. This has been Content Roundup.
Hey, Uncle AJ, I'm Donovan. And I'm Dallas. And welcome back to Acting Up with AJ and Crew Podcast.
Yeah, so we are back, and now we're going to talk about the box office of Champions. So this movie came out in March. Can we pull up?
Champions was released March 10th of 2023.
And so it had a theatrical run.
About 3,000 theaters. Champions was based off another film called Campeones, a Spanish film done in 2018. So even actually pretty recently, only 5 years apart from them. Campeones won a bunch of nominations, as well as winning a bunch of those nominations throughout the years, but it also kind of had a similar box office of only 23.3 million.
I think about the thing that stands out to me is a couple different things. I think because of the way that the box office is today, most of the movies that are going to make a lot of money in today's box office are big tempo movies, or big movies that have or movies that have built-in IP. That's I like to do this for people that may not know. Intellectual property. A lot of people use acronyms, and I'm like, what is that? So I like to say intellectual property, or like big things like DC or Marvel, or or the big things that that may have reboots, different things like that. But also, this is the thing that stands out in my mind about Champions. Is I remember when you were telling me about this movie, Sean, and this movie was coming out in March, and I think I found out, I think I literally found out like a couple weeks before it was gonna come out, but I didn't see any promo for it. Like, you told me about it, and I looked it up with a friend of mine, and we actually did a video. We did a review of the trailer for another channel that I work for, and then when I did see promotion for it, it was when it was actually already out. And one of the things I was talking about, and then I think about, is that with a lot of films with disabilities, and I'm very proud and excited that it's out. Like I said, I think it's worth it to check out. It's very funny, very good, strong ensemble. But, the thing that I get sad about is I know a lot of people may not have even heard. Perhaps if you're listening right now, you may have not even heard of the movie Champions, because a lot of times movies like this do not get the budget that it needs for promotion.
Right.
And so I was sad about this right away because I knew about it. Like, I think you told me about it, and it was March. I think it was like maybe a week or two for coming out.
Yeah, I think I saw it mid-February.
Yeah.
When I just stumbled on it on YouTube. But also, we just have a community that are very vocal with each other in letting each other know about news. And so, like, a group had found out about it, but really it was word of mouth.
Yeah, it was word of mouth. And we are still at that. We're still at that point when it comes to, I know in a large sense, people may say that's independent film in the first place, but we're still at that point with disability. This was distributed by a big distributor, Universal and Focus Film. They are not independent distributors by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just like I was very afraid and very sad because I knew already that this movie probably wasn't going to get a lot of traction. As soon as you told me about it, Sean, I tried to find. Now, in the coming weeks, as the movie was coming out, there was more promotion, so I did see it. But when you told me about this, I tried to look up different interviews with Woody Harrelson, maybe some press junkets, and I did a censor search, and I couldn't find any press junkets or anything. And I think there was a major push maybe on the Today Show when it was coming out.
Well, what also came out in March of 2023, you were looking at Creed 3, you were looking at John Wick 4, Scream 6, you got the newest Shazam movie that just came out this year, and you got Dungeons and Dragons, all of which have faces to them. And like we were discussing on Woody Harrelson not necessarily being a sellable place, but like really it was the disabled community trying to push this as much as possible with no help from the actual distributing company.
And I just want to say, like, this is just my honest, bare bones opinions. I wish, and you know, I'm not involved in the company, so I just want to say there are a lot of factors that maybe I'm not aware of, but I just want to say that I wish that it had more promotion, but I do wanna thank Universal and Focus Film, because they did give this movie a theatrical release.
I saw it in theaters.
Theatrical releases still matter, and a lot of times it would be interesting to track later. Maybe we could do an update later on the tracking to see if it does better on VOD or not, because a lot of times if the movie has a theatrical run, it does better on VOD. I do wanna give props to Universal and Focus Features for giving it a theatrical release, because especially with a movie like this, more of an independent vibe to it, like a smaller movie, they could have just stuck it on VOD and streaming, but they did not. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you. However, I would say it could have been given more of a promotional budget.
I know if Mighty Ducks can make $50 million on its box office run, I think Champions can do the same.
Yeah, I think like especially, and I'm going to say something, and not that I speak, because I don't speak for the entire disability community. That is something that I would never try and do. But I think as a person in this community, we're so excited and we so crave and we like good entertainment, and we want to see our community on that screen and our stories reflected. That I think if we knew about it, I think we would have had a higher box office. I really think we would have, because like I said, we are minority that's not seen on screen a lot. So when we are, we really want to celebrate that. And I think we would have had a larger audience if it was promoted well. A lot of times with disability, whether it's a film or a book or anything about disability, right now, it's a lot of disability things are word of mouth. A lot of us that are in the disability bubble, like, we tell each other. But a lot of times, and that's great because we want to celebrate things and get our story out there. But a lot of times it's ourselves talking to ourselves, and we want to get great movies out there with great content and really well told stories. We want to get that out there to the movie audience because there's a lot of people out there that enjoy great comedy, great movies with well told stories. There's a lot of cinephiles out there that would have loved this film. It's a great film. It's a great popcorn movie too. You just want to go chill out, laugh, have a good time, and enjoy a great soundtrack too. Check out Champions. And so the other point I want to make is this is not about at all like the right thing to do or the feel good, and I don't want to talk about anybody. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but it's not about like Universal and NBC and Peacock and everybody. They might have felt good, and they should feel good to a certain extent. They did put this movie out, and it's a good movie. It has a great cast. Shout out to the casting. I really enjoyed the script, but it's not a thing of we're doing this to feel good or it's the right thing or this is a business. So treat it as a business and treat it as this is an audience that is way underserved, and if we promote this right, we can show good entertainment and show that we're on the right side of doing this right, and we can make a buck, and you can, but people have to know that it's out there. People have to know. And now here's Shanzi with Disability Spotlight. Shanzi?
Thanks, AJ. Welcome to Disability Spotlight, where we highlight the many talents within the disabled community. This episode's spotlight goes to the multifaceted, multicultural, ensemble cast for none other than this episode's topic of conversation, Champions. This cast represents the many shades of disability, from autism, traumatic brain injury, Down syndrome, and so on. Now, there are 10 to this group, so I'm going to go a little quicker than normally would when it's just one or two people, but all of them are very deserving of all of this recognition. To start off, we're going to start with the only female on the team, the strong Spitfire of Madison Tevlin, playing the role of Cosentino. Her previous work include a few episodes on a comedy sitcom known as Mr. D, as well as a few episodes on Lost and Found Music Studios. She has 2 upcoming projects in the works for 2024, with a voice acting role within the movie The Adventures of Tiki the Wonder Dog, as well as a film that is currently in post-production at the moment, a coming-of-age story comedy called Screams from the Tower. Moving on, Joshua Felder, playing the role of Darius, is a global ambassador and international board of directors member for the Best Buddies International, as well as the accolades of being the first ever disabled dancer at the Super Bowl, where he danced with The Weeknd. Next up, Matthew Von Der Ehe, playing the role as Craig, started his acting career at age 7, was gotten a role at the age of 9 on Yo Gabba Gabba, as well as has done a few episodes in the shows Code Black and Weeds. Next, Kevin Iannucci, playing the role as Johnny, has done 2 other films, Embattled in 2020, as well as The Best of Enemies in 2019. Moving on, Casey Metcalf, playing the role of Marlin, was a part of the New England Youth Theater, where he did many stage plays, including a character study of Shakespearean literature's King Lear with the young Shakespeare players. He has also been a star on the award-winning documentary Kids with Cameras that released in 2009. Beyond this, 5 of the other members of the Friends basketball team were first-time roles. Auditioning alongside hundreds of other actors, these 5 were given their first shot at a big screen debut. Congratulations to Ashton Gooning playing Cody, James Day Keith playing Benny, Alex Hintz playing Arthur, Bradley Edens playing Showtime, and Tom Sinclair playing Blair. Congratulations to the amazing ensemble, to the movie champions. The Friends basketball team is a shining beacon for diversity within the film industry. To end this spotlight, a quote from Metcalf himself, quote, "The more people we have in this industry who are diverse, not just racially diverse, but also neurodiverse, I think that's exactly what the industry needs." End quote. I couldn't agree more with you, Casey. As I see it, with 20% of our population being disabled, to not include 20% of those in our characters and roles is a shame. As with diversity like this, it only brightens the colors of the rainbow. This has been Disability Spotlight. Chauncey out.
Acting Up with AJ and Crew is produced by Sean G. Billups, segment producer Cheryl Green, and yours truly, your boy, Aljani AJ Murray. Special thanks to Jessica Marks for behind-the-scenes assistance. Champions is available on Amazon Video right now. Closed captioning and audio description are available for your access needs.